All right, it is a very special episode of the Blakey Lock Show. It is Super Bowl week. This week, I'm joined by Ethan and Nick Zararis from Gotham, from NYG Quarterly, to talk about the
Centennially,
Super Bowl here biannually.
whenever we feel
And
like it.
but yeah, we're gonna run through. We're gonna cover the Super Bowl. Obviously, this is it. This is the big one, the one we've all been waiting for. I feel like people, I don't know, we're kind of disappointed with the Super Bowl matchup. Everybody was kind of rooting for the Lions. People wanted it to be somebody other than the Chiefs. Literally anybody else but the Chiefs. People wanted the Bills. People wanted the Ravens. But here we are. It's a rematch of Super Bowl 54. 54, I think is right. Where the Chiefs won in that score. I was looking at it today, thinking about that game. Final score of that game was 31-20, which is insane because the 49ers were up 10 with 7 minutes left in the game and ended up losing by 11. Gave up 3 touchdowns in the final 8 minutes for another Kyle Shanahan choke job. He's 0 for 2 with double-digit leads in the Super Bowl, obviously 28-3. So we'll get into all of it, but I guess we'll just start kind of big picture, what everybody's thoughts are going into this matchup. It seems like the big debate is obviously who's the better team. The 49ers are short favorites, 2-point favorites. It's kind of gone between like 1 and 3 the whole last couple of weeks. And it's basically, are you going to take the team that's the better team top to bottom, or are you going to take the greatest quarterback of all time? And that's basically the debate. Ethan, we'll start with you. Where, just big picture, are you on this game?
I keep going back and forth on it. I think I'm 90% there into talking myself into a 49ers massacre. I think that they win big. The only reservation is what you brought up. It's Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy, and early season Brock Purdy, before they ripped off that win streak, and during that win streak, I feel like there have been rare occasions where he has looked comfortable for the entirety of a game, especially for a game with the stakes as big as this against someone who is undoubtedly not yet, but on the GOAT trajectory. So really, my only hesitation is that I think that that's what I'll have talked myself into leading up until game time. I just think that they are such a complete team. I think that offensively, obviously, the Chiefs are gonna win the quarterback battle, but in terms of weapons, I don't think it's particularly close in terms of which side has the better weapons. I mean, Ayuk would be wide receiver 1 on a number of teams around the NFL. Debo, I want to talk about his props. I would love to find out what the multiple touchdown prop is for Debo and what odds you can get on that. He might be one of my MVP dark horses. Obviously, we're skipping over Christian McCaffrey, best running back in the league. But if both defenses are good, I think the 49ers have the clear advantage on offense. And as of right now, they are my pick.
All right, Nick, what about you?
I've been trying to come up with a reason to take the Chiefs because this feels like we're being taken advantage of. Like you said, the numbers moved back and forth between 1 and 3, depending where you've looked over the course of the last week. And they're not in the business of giving away money, but when you put the best quarterback of all time as a short dog and you're going to allow people to keep hammering that over and over and over again, I really feel like I need to find a way to not take the Chiefs in this game. I really feel like I need to, because everything Ethan just said, I agree with. Talent-wise, the only way this game stays close is if the Kansas City pass rush can speed Purdy up and force San Francisco to run the ball, because they've got the corners to play coverage, but you can only play coverage for so long, and Kansas City is a little bit susceptible to the run. The Ravens getting away from the run is part of what lost them that game, and that's what San Francisco wants to do. They want to turn this into a rock fight. They want to get Juszczyk and Kittle and the second tight end and the third tight end out there and play bully ball. And in an ideal world, if San Francisco runs this game the way they want to, there's not really any phase of the game where they don't have a personnel matchup. Like the one weakness on San Francisco is probably their secondary, but their pass rush is so good and their linebackers are so good. If you force Mahomes into that incremental underneath stuff because you're playing a little bit off, I think the 49ers are more than content with that. It's really just a matter of you try and talk yourself into the narratives. How do you see it? How do you see it? But San Francisco feels like such a better team. Kansas City is still, best quarterback ever probably, and they're only off by a point. Something's off here. Something in the calculus of all of this doesn't seem right.
Well, one thing that I'll add that we haven't really touched on yet is if the Chiefs lose, then there's no way that Taylor Swift is going to be able to endorse Joe Biden at the middle of the field while Travis Kelce is getting his 5th booster shot. So you got to keep that in mind when you're handicapping the game because it will come into play.
Well, is that a narrative for or against the Chiefs? I guess it
For the
depends
Chiefs.
on who you think is running the show.
Ethan thinks Biden made the call.
I think Biden made the call. Yeah.
I mean, anything's possible. But when you're looking at just kind of going off what you guys said, I mean, I bet the 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to win the game. I think they're the better team. I do think this. I bet the money line because I don't want to mess with anything. I bet minus 118 on a money line. I think anything up to like minus 130, which you can get like minus 125 pretty easily. I think it's worth it in this game. I think it could be a little bit more low scoring than people think. I bet a little bit on the under. I don't love the under, but I do think it's not going to be a shootout. I think it'll be pretty close to what the posted number is, 48, like a 24-21, 27-20, like that type of game. And I do think the narrative of the, like, you can't bet against Mahomes, like it's a dumb narrative at the end of the day. Like I get it, but I mean, the same thing you said about Brady, like, oh, you can't bet against Brady. Brady lost 3 Super Bowls. Like you could bet against Brady in the Super Bowl. It's
he
not
was
like
favorites in those though.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so that's different when it's like, oh yeah, is he going to cover this number? And then the underdog ends up winning outright. But he was a favorite. I believe the Chiefs were favorites in the Super Bowl against the Bucs with Tom Brady.
I just looked that up while we were talking. They were minus 165 on the money line to open.
Yeah, and that was a blowout. Like he didn't even contend in that Super Bowl. It was 31-9 final score, 21-6 halftime score. Like it's this narrative of like, oh, I know how good he's been as an underdog, and it's ridiculous. But it's not like, oh, these guys in these spots, like you're throwing your money away if you bet against them. Like it's not true. And realistically, like we were just talking about the last time these two teams played in a Super Bowl, like that was the 49ers game and they just gave it away. And whether it's because Jimmy G wasn't the guy that could put together a drive to kind of bring the clock down, or Kyle Shanahan, same as the 28-3 game, his play calling is too conservative when he has a lead, and Patrick Mahomes being Patrick Mahomes, and no matter who the better team is, if he needs a drive to go get points, like he'll just find a way to do it. And that part of it is real for sure when it comes to, you don't want to bet against this guy, because if you're up 4 and he gets the ball with 2 minutes left, you're like, yeah, I lost. Like he's going to go get a touchdown. So that part of it, I agree with in terms of Mahomes being like the boogeyman in that sense. But I do think top to bottom, the 49ers just have more going for them. And I think the Chiefs offense, like I am trusting the sample size that I saw the entire regular season from the Chiefs offense more than the sample size of the 3-game postseason. And I think even in the 3-game postseason, I think people are kind of overplaying how good their offense has been. Like Travis Kelce has had a revival for sure, which has been a massive difference. But against Miami, their defense dominated. Miami's offense just didn't show up to that game. Never had a chance. Against Baltimore last week or 2 weeks ago, Obviously they were good in the first half and put together a couple early drives, but they didn't score in the second half. Like, they were completely shut down in the second half, and the Ravens just couldn't put the ball in the end zone to come back. And against the Bills, I don't think people talked enough about how banged up the Bills defense was going into that game. And in that game, they were completely short at linebacker. They pulled guys up off the practice squad that were getting minutes in that game, getting serious snaps in that game. And Travis Kelce dominated in that game against the Bills. And that's because the Bills were playing backups at safety and at linebacker. And this is arguably the best linebacker core in football, maybe the Ravens. But
I'm already sick of the amount of coverage Fred Warner is going to get during the game.
Yeah, I mean, he's a monster.
What do you mean how? Nick, we've spoken about this. It's pure jealousy.
It's true. I mean, a third round pick who was casted as like slow and undersized, and he just kind of turned into the Terminator, kind of out of nowhere. Yeah,
he's ridiculous. Him, Greenlaw, like they're monsters. I think they're going to be able to contain Kelce. And I mean, again, what we saw from this offense all year was there were only two guys that Mahomes could at all go to, in Rice and Kelce. And even Rice, no matter how good he's been, he's still a rookie. You don't know what's going to happen when he gets into a Super Bowl and all the lights are on him and the defensive attention is on him because he's the clear number one wide receiver. Travis Kelce is obviously, his postseason career is absurd. Like, his postseason numbers are maybe like the best ever for a position player. But at the end of the day, they, like I said, they have such good linebackers. They know exactly who they need to take away. And I think they're going to be able to do enough defensively. And the last time these teams played in a Super Bowl, Mahomes threw 2 interceptions and didn't really play that well until the last, like I said, like last 6 minutes. So,
and I will say there is something to be said for the anti-analytics debate or side of things, where it talk about momentum, talk about confidence, and the 49ers being able to mount a huge comeback in the NFC Championship game, and their defense coming in clutch on a number of fourth downs. You know, some of them were drops, but still you survive that. It gives you guys confidence and momentum.
Same thing with Green Bay too. They had to find a way in that game too. They've really been up against it. Whereas
it has not been an easy postseason. Exactly. Yeah. So I think they're rolling into the game with a lot of confidence. I think the Chiefs always have confidence, but when you think about sort of the anti-narrative for the 49ers, and I think that mainly goes to Brock Purdy as well as Shanahan's, I'll say, skeletons in his closet from post Super Bowls, I do think that the roster itself has a lot of confidence going into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I tweeted about it going into halftime of the 49ers Lions game. I was like, I think the 49ers, I live bet the 49ers money line. I was like, I think the 49ers are going to come back and win this game. it's my LeBron moment, but I do have proof of my live bets to show that I actually did bet it. But the 49ers, I tweeted, like, if they can actually make a comeback and come from behind in a playoff game, which they had never really done. They had always played with leads and ended up blowing them sometimes. Then that's like one big monkey off of Kyle Shanahan's back to show, like, hey, I can do this. Like, I don't just like script up a good start to a game and then hold on for dear life. Like, I can call the right plays for a game-winning drive and a whole second half of game-winning drives. And then I said the second step will then be if he can actually win a Super Bowl, because I mean, the Super Bowl, his 2 trips to a Super Bowl have been absolute nightmares. And so I think this is going to be a huge test. I mean, I love Shanahan. I think he's the best offensive mind in the NFL. I do think that he has made huge mistakes in the past in terms of clock management and decisions on when to be aggressive and go for fourth downs and things like that. And that's why I think that Lions game, it almost helped him when he needed to come from behind and just be like, we're just going for it. Like, we got to just push full throttle. And it showed what that offense can be when they're going full throttle. So maybe he learned something from that. Like, maybe I should just be more aggressive more often. But I also said, I think that game-winning drive against the Packers, like you said, Nick, is what really sold me on Brock Purdy being like able to really do this, because I wrote something about this today. I think Brock Purdy right now is way better than Jimmy Garoppolo was
For
in this
sure.
Super Bowl when these two teams played in the last Super Bowl. And I think that was a big example of, they were like, hey, like Jimmy G he had chances to put a drive together to extend the lead late in the fourth quarter. He had a chance to go win the game on a drive at the end of the fourth quarter and just couldn't do it. And I think everything we've seen from him since should also prove that Jimmy G is just not very good. I think the season Brock Purdy has had he's an MVP finalist, is way better than anything that Brock Purdy could do or that Jimmy G could do. So I do have faith in Brock Purdy that if it's a 2-minute drill and he needs to go get points, or if it's a 2-minute drill and it's like you can't let Patrick Mahomes touch the ball again, that he can go get a first down or two that he needs to put the game away. And I think that's the difference between last time and this time.
I agree
And Christian
with you.
McCaffrey.
One thing on that, you bring that up. I think the other thing is that Kyle just trusts Purdy a lot more. Like I put together something last week for work during the buildup. Purdy had more pass attempts just in the 2 playoff games they played than the 3 that Jimmy G had played that entire playoff run. So of the 3 games, Purdy already had something like 70 something pass attempts, and he had 40 in the Green Bay game. Granted, they were coming from behind and they had to throw a little bit more than they would like, but I don't think Jimmy ever attempted 40 pass attempts in a playoff game. So that's part of it too. It's not just that he's better, it's that Kyle trusts him to do more. I mean, they really ran a training wheels offense. And yeah, the concepts are simple. They're tendency breaker stuff where the 49ers are going to go out there with 2 tight ends and a fullback, and they're going to throw out of that look because you wouldn't expect them to do that. So as far as Purdy versus Garoppolo, I don't think it's a conversation. I do think there is something for the idea of being able to elevate an offense, and that I don't know if Purdy can do. But as far as talent, yeah, he's clearly better than Garoppolo, and Kyle trusts him a whole lot more.
Yeah, and I think like you were saying about Ethan, you were saying about like confidence being a factor that is not going to show up in any analytics or anything, but you know how much everybody on the Chiefs sideline, like we were saying, if Mahomes gets the ball and needs to score, everybody in the stadium thinks he's going to score. I do think that people on the Chiefs sideline have that same belief in Brock Purdy, whether it's obviously he's not on Mahomes' level, anywhere near his level, but I do think like what we've seen this week, they had the article come out where the story came out about Kyle Shanahan said going into that first offseason with Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Jimmy G, that Shanahan said to Jed York, hey, Purdy's our best quarterback. Like, I think he's our best guy. And they decided ultimately, like, we've invested into Trey Lance. This kid's still a rookie. Like, let's give Lance a shot. But in that offseason, Shanahan was like, he's our best quarterback. So he saw it in him right away and has obviously believed in him from the start. And we've seen clips of, I know I saw one of Debo being like, yeah, anybody that's saying like he's a game manager or like it's the system, like that's bullshit. Like everybody believes like he's that guy. So like whether he is that guy or not, like doesn't really matter, because I think the confidence in the team believing in him fully is like means just as much as him actually being that guy.
Agreed.
But so that's kind of like high level on the game, but we can start looking into these props a little bit. Obviously, touchdown, like anytime touchdown, first touchdown is probably like the most popular, that everybody wants to have at least a couple of those. So I'm actually going to share my screen. Hopefully this works.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Here we go. This show is not presented by any sports book, but if anybody wants to pay me any money, I will use your sports book instead. But so this is anytime touchdown and first touchdown. I know, Ethan, you had talked about Debo. If we look at multiple touchdowns, McCaffrey is obviously the best chance, but Debo two plus touchdowns is 12-1 here.
Yeah, I like that value. Obviously, for a guy who's known to be able to run the ball as well, you want to believe that when they get down inside the 10, inside the 5, they're going to be feeding McCaffrey a lot. But plus 1200 for a guy that's very tough to bring down, who they're going to be running in motion a lot. I don't mind throwing a dart there. One thing that I do really like, if you're looking for a same game parlay, and if you do tend to agree with the three of us that you do like the 49ers side, you can parlay McCaffrey anytime, which is like minus 225, minus 250 with 49ers money line and get that to plus 120, which I personally really, really like. But if you're looking for more of a long shot and you want anyone 2+ touchdowns, I do like Debo a lot.
Yeah, Nick, are there any touchdown scores you like?
They did a good job of getting him involved the last time they were in the Super Bowl. Anytime, and this is more just for fun, but anytime a team that has a fullback makes the Super Bowl, I usually like to throw $5-10. I'm going to probably throw $10 on the juice just because he had a touchdown and a 2-point conversion the last time they were in the Super Bowl. They do a good job of getting him involved down in the red zone. So, and it's probably 10, 11 to 1, something like that.
Yeah, it's 10 to 1 here, but I've seen better elsewhere. Like I said, nobody's paying me, so you can. I have already bet it, and I got it. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean 10 to 1, something like that. I don't know. You can check if it's better anywhere else, but I agree. I bet him to score a touchdown. The last time these teams were in the Super Bowl, I make my donation to Kyle Juszczyk every time he plays in a big game. I'm betting him to score an anytime touchdown and first touchdown, 50 to 1, early scripted drive, get down to the 2-yard line and give him the rock and let him pat. He almost scored in the NFC Championship game. They had the ball at like the 3 and gave it to him, and he ran like 2 yards to the 1, and then they gave it to McCaffrey. So they're looking at him. And just talking about Debo a little bit more, I did bet my first bet I placed when the Super Bowl matchup became official was Debo anytime touchdown plus 180, which now this is more the number, plus 140, a little bit less value, but I still like it. And I like the 2 touchdowns, like you were saying. I think he is built for like playoff games and big games where there's these unique plays that only he can do. When he got hurt in the Packers game, after the game, when Shanahan was asked about like the impact on the offense after he got hurt, Shanahan literally said like there was a massive chunk of the playbook I just had to throw out.
Yeah,
because we can't run those plays with anybody except Debo. And so Shanahan clearly comes up with these concepts, whether it's having McCaffrey and Debo in the backfield at the same time and having that threat for the ball could really go anywhere, out of the slot, out wide. Like he can screen pass game, he can go deep, like basically anything you want somebody to do on offense, he can do it. So I think in these games where you're not saving the play for anything else, like this is it. You're not saving his health. Obviously he's been banged up. You're not saving his health for anything else. Like you're sending him out for as many snaps as you can possibly can. So I've bet a couple of Debo props. I bet the anytime touchdown plus 180. And then I bet his rushing plus receiving, which is at 75.5. Over 75.5 rushing plus receiving. And I would take that over. Some people would, maybe their instinct would just do receiving yards for him, but I definitely wouldn't do that.
I agree with you.
I wrote up his props for the Action Network this week. Should be out this weekend. I'll be sharing that. But he, in his past playoff games, has gone over this number. Sorry, I'm trying to find this. He's gone over this number a lot for sure in the postseason, and he's done it in tons of different ways. Like in 2021 against the Cowboys, he had 72 rushing yards in the divisional round game against the Cowboys. He, against the Chiefs, the last time they played in the Super Bowl, had 39 receiving yards and 53 rushing yards. So that was 92 total. So he, in these playoff games, is very much split between getting carries and still getting reception. So going for one or the other can be really risky. So I think the move is the rushing plus receiving with Debo.
I like it. Looking at the list, was Mahomes anytime plus 400? No.
I do have a smaller one that's not a touchdown that I think because of the way the 49ers use him, it's not great. It's only minus 110, but Juwan Jennings over 11.5 yards. If he has a catch in this game, it will probably be over 11.5 yards. He is only on the field on third downs where they really need to have it, basically. I feel there's not a lot of great value on this board, being that there are so many stars in this game on both sides, frankly. But Juwan Jennings, I could see getting that one catch for 12 yards. We were close on Jameson Williams 2 weeks ago. He ended up with he was off by 10 yards. We were close.
Yeah, I like that. I agree that if he has one big catch, it'll probably be like a 15-yard, 10 to 15-yard catch. And he might have two, and then you're almost definitely going to get it. The only one I liked, a Noah Gray touchdown at 9-1.
I was looking at Blake Bell, but
Yeah.
Noah Gray is kind of replaced Blake Bell in the sense Blake Bell is, there's a good chance he won't even see a target the entire game. Noah Gray's gotten, even this postseason, a decent amount of looks, and especially down in the red zone inside the 10, where it's like, just don't let Travis Kelce get open, and then that kind of opens up opportunities for somebody like Noah Gray. And then I did also bet a Purdy plus 750 touchdown. I love quarterbacks anytime touchdown, especially in postseason games where it's like you just got to have it, and it's like whatever you got to do.
You got the adrenaline going. You see a hole,
just break loose and run. And Purdy is not known for really being a runner, but as we see with all of these quarterbacks, when you get into the postseason, they run way more than they do in the regular season because, adrenaline. Like, I just got to go find a way to get these yards. There's no injury concern compared to what there normally is. It's like, I just got to go try to pick up these yards. And we saw Purdy do it in the Lions game a lot when they were making those drives to come back. He used his legs a ton. So I like that. But now let's look at MVP real quick.
One other that I may throw a dart on: Patrick Mahomes under 1.5 touchdown passes.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think
plus 130, over 1.5, juice to minus 160. Again, this goes back to our conversation to start the podcast. If you think that the 49ers defense is as good as they are and that the Chiefs lack weapons outside of Travis Kelce, I mean, Pacheco's good, but listen, he's fine. He's just a running back. 1.5, get a slow start to the game, low scoring game. I don't know. It's in the realm of possibility. They get near the goal line. Maybe he runs one in. They give it to Pacheco. I mean, he's obviously going to have at least one, but I don't know, man. Plus 130 is staring out.
And the Chiefs might bring out some gimmicky shit too. Because the Chiefs love doing that in the Super Bowl, breaking out the gimmicky shit around the goal line where you get, a Kelce handoff or you get the leak back screen, the type of stuff that makes everybody go insane.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing to look at in touchdown scorers, that it's so hard to just be like, this is going to be the guy. But if you see one of these like Richie James, 11-1, Sky Moore plus 700, like any of these, like, I don't know, any of these guys that are further down this list, even if Tony's active, Tony scored in the Super Bowl last year. Like they love to, just pull out those plays in big game. Like we were saying about the way that the 49ers use Debo, the Chiefs do that, but with like 5 different guys, not as effectively as Debo, which is why they use so many different people. But so it's hard to kind of go and pick from this list, like who's that going to be. But if you want to take a shot on one of those guys, thinking you'll get that chance, I would not hold it against you. But looking at MVP,
can you bet MVP in New York?
No, which is why if you look at the corner of my screen, I had to change my website to betmgm.nj.com so that I could see the MVP odds. But I can bet it somewhere from my home that's not BetMGM.
There you go.
So I have an MVP bet, possibly 2. I'm deciding if I want to do the second one. But so obviously when it comes to MVP bet, a majority of the time it's going to be the winning team's quarterback that wins the MVP, which is why Mahomes actually, it's interesting because normally the favorite is the team that's the favorite. It's their quarterback is the favorite to win MVP.
Yeah.
So thinking about it in the sense that Brock Purdy's team is favored to win the game and he's plus 230 to win the MVP is actually kind of nuts. I know that this team, McCaffrey is also an MVP finalist. Like this could be the first time since Terrell Davis in the 90s that we have a running back win if McCaffrey just goes off. But really, when you think about this, you kind of just have to think about it in terms of like, what's the storyline going to be like after this game? It's hard to imagine Patrick Mahomes not being the MVP if the Chiefs win, which is why he is the favorite at plus 135. You can make an argument for Kelsey. I think he's the only other person on the Chiefs that you can make an argument for just because of everything around him the past couple months with the Taylor Swift and his social media podcast presence and like the fact that he was kind of written off in the regular season and then has had a really great postseason. And if he caps it off with like 2 touchdowns and 12 catches and 150 yards, like you could give it to him, but I still think it would end up going to Mahomes. So I think if you think the Chiefs are going to win, I guess Mahomes at plus 130, but then you might as well just bet the Chiefs money line. Honestly,
Right.
It's not really worth it. So if you think the Chiefs are going to win, I would honestly just not be betting the MVP. If you think the 49ers are going to win, or if you want to just take a shot, I do think that there is value on Brock Purdy at plus 230. Like I said, as the winning team's quarterback, would be the most likely player to get it. I don't like McCaffrey to win the MVP. I think
I love McCaffrey to win the MVP.
Yeah, Ethan,
Really?
I'm with you, which isn't good.
All right,
but
you guys go ahead, and then I'll say why I disagree.
He's the best player on their offense. They run the offense through him. If this game goes the way we think it does, that means either the San Francisco defense turned Mahomes over like 2 or 3 times, in which case we could probably talk about maybe Fred Warner or somebody for 2 interceptions being Super Bowl MVP. But even then, I still think San Francisco is going to have to get the ball into the red zone, and that's going to be your McCaffrey time. But other than that, I mean, I think there's too many mouths to feed other than McCaffrey for me to really have strong conviction to say Kittle or Debo or Ayuk. I think really CMC, Purdy, or a defensive guy, I think are the only guys it could be for San Francisco.
I really think the only guy it could be for San Francisco is McCaffrey, unless we get like a 4 touchdown performance from Purdy. And if that's the case, you can get like 4+ touchdowns at like plus 800 or something like that. I think that we should be expecting 30 touches from McCaffrey, both on the ground and in the air. If it is a low scoring game, chances are it's because they're running the ball. And you look at how many times this season he scored multiple touchdowns in a game. The anytime touchdown alone is minus 250, minus 225. I think that if the 49ers win the game, regardless of whether or not McCaffrey has some insane run that he breaks off or whatever it is, I think he's finishing with at least 150 yards, 1 touchdown, maybe 2 touchdowns. And if the 49ers are leading going into the 4th quarter, they're just going to pound the rock and make those stats look even better. I think, to me, at plus 450, that's tremendous value. And again, like Nick said, or maybe it was you, Blake, I honestly can't remember. Like, they just have so many weapons on that team to spread the ball around to, that the one constant is getting the ball is McCaffrey.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with like your argument. I guess where I'm coming at it is more from a value perspective, not like
plus 450 is good value for the best offensive player on the team.
No, because we've seen running backs have monster games. We saw
Damian Williams. Yeah,
Damian Williams had 3 rushing touchdowns.
That's fine, but he's not Christian McCaffrey.
No, and I know it's a narrative. Like I said, going into the MVP thing, it's a narrative thing, and obviously, so being like a name and somebody that people are like talking about going into the game actually does make a difference, unlike any other bet you want to make. But from my perspective, I think, and I guess you can bet both theoretically, but I'm betting Debo at 25-1 to win the MVP. I think the thing that when you look for a skill position player to win the Super Bowl MVP, because it's so hard for the quarterback to not win, it's like, how can he, which is an argument for McCaffrey. It's like if he has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, like, yeah, I guess it'd be hard to not give it to him. But there's a chance Deebo Samuel has 80 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, but then also has 75 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And if he has 2 touchdowns and McCaffrey has 150 yards and a touchdown, I would be taking, I know that's a lot of yards to be going around to 2 players, but just hypothetically, if they're in the ballpark of the same yardage, I just think that Deebo's like a more interesting story, and his usage, like it's a chance for like a more like insane kind of play. And so I think their opportunities to win, McCaffrey's obviously guaranteed way more touches, which makes a big difference. But in the gap of value between plus 450 and plus 2,500, I think is a pretty huge difference compared to their actual opportunities to get in the end zone and like make those game-changing plays. And I will say Deebo Samuel also, they have used him at kick returner. He was a great kick returner in college, and he's been used kind of sparingly as a kick returner in the NFL just because of injury issues. But again, this is a game where it's like we're not going to not put Deebo a kick returner because, and so there's always a chance he breaks a huge kick return, and that whether it's for a touchdown or sets up an easy score when they need one, like I think there's a lot of opportunities for him to do something really special. So having that much more value.
I don't disagree with you. I just think that the volume has to be there. And when you're looking at both guys, yeah, there's a huge delta in the value there between plus 450 and plus 2,500. But for Deebo, like you go look at his game logs from this year, like he had the second and not even the third to last and the second to last game, regular season games, he was only targeted twice. He didn't get a single rushing attempt in the second to last game. He got 1 rushing attempt in the third to last game. So like, I get it. Like if he were to get the volume, he's a guy where like, yeah, if he gets a catch, it's going over 10 yards. He gets a rushing attempt, great chance he's breaking off like a 15, 20 yard play. Not just because of how hard he is to bring down, but because of the play design that they use with him. So I totally agree with you. And I was just gushing about, his props. And I think, yeah, absolutely. If he breaks off one of those type of games, yeah, MVP is certainly in the realm. I just know that McCaffrey is getting those touches. Like that's not, unless he gets hurt, nothing's happening to those touches.
Yeah. There's a reason it's plus 450 versus plus 2,500 is that it's a much safer pick in terms of he's guaranteed to get a certain amount of touches, and if they win the game, it's hard to imagine that he's not a huge part of it. But it's just, which I could just be off on this, but there's something in my head that it's like if Christian McCaffrey's final stat line is 130 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns, nobody's even like that surprised. It's like the odds are almost telling you like that's what he's going to do. Like it's almost expected of him.
But it's,
and that's where I think it could hurt him somewhat.
Maybe, but he finishes with 130 yards and a touchdown, and Purdy's only got 200 passing yards and a touchdown. And I mean, if McCaffrey's only got 130 all-purpose yards and 1 touchdown, you have to assume it's a low-scoring game.
Yeah, no, I think that the 49ers are much more interesting if you want to bet an MVP. And again, we're on
the same page here. If you think the 49ers are going to win and you want an MVP bet, your 2 best options are McCaffrey and Deebo. And it just depends on how you see the game going. Yeah, or bet them both, or whatever. Depends on how you envision the game going.
One a long shot, one a safer option. Anybody else on that? Like we said, like if the Chiefs win, it's so almost guaranteed Mahomes. We were talking about defensive players. It's just so hard with defensive players because somebody pulls out a random pick 6 or something, and it's like so hard it's like not always going to be the best player. I feel like Von Miller is the only time that it was like, oh, just this guy that is so much like different than everybody else actually just made all the game-changing plays. Normally it's
Sam Darnold.
Normally it's kind of random. So yes, I mean, Sam Darnold. Brock Purdy would have to get hurt very early for that to be possible, but could be fun. But I would say, as much as we didn't want to talk about him, I think Fred Warner is the only defensive player that I would pull the trigger on. I think with the Chiefs, like I think Snead is a monster, like pick six maybe, but again, pick six is so hard to like kind of like bet that that's going to happen. So I would go with Warner. I think especially the narrative of going against Mahomes, I think if he can somehow have like a strip sack or an interception or like a forced fumble and an interception and also have like 12 tackles, like I think that's where in a low scoring game, he could be the guy that's kind of a difference maker. He's the only person on the defensive side and like way down this list that I would look at.
The problem with me for Warner is on the season, he only has 2.5 sacks.
4 picks, 2 sacks. He doesn't have a ton of counting tackles.
Yeah, sacks, you're not.
That's a market. He's probably, what's his line on tackles? Because he pretty consistently is 9-10 tackles a game.
Yeah.
So
over 8.5 for tackles plus assists plus 105.
I don't hate that.
That's a bet.
I'm in on that.
I mean, he's
tackles is 5.5.
Wait, just tackles. So solo tackles
5.5 plus 120, or tackles plus assists 8.5 plus 105.
Yeah, I mean,
I like that too, especially thinking about how the safety blanket of Travis Kelce, where he might just be getting those 4-yard, 5-yard checkdowns, and then it's just Warner standing right behind him, making sure he doesn't get any more than that and taking him down. I agree. I like that too.
Good call.
Yeah. All right, Nick, that's the one that you've called out. We're all going to go bet that. No pressure. So I mean, that's a good thing to cheer for too. Normally for props, you're rooting for like a big offensive play for somebody to be rooting like every time the ball comes across the middle. You're like, where's
Warner?
Go lay him out. That could be fun. So here we can just kind of wrap up. Ethan, are you getting off in a couple minutes?
Yeah, I got to go in 2 minutes.
All right. Do you want to give your kind of final thoughts, and we'll end with a score prediction. We'll let you go first and you can hop off, and then me and Nick can.
Sure. 24-20 49ers money line, McCaffrey MVP, Dart on Debo for MVP, Debo 2+ touchdowns, Dart. And then we're riding with Nick and his Fred Warner over 8.5.
All right. Let's do it. All right, Ethan, thanks for coming on. Everybody make sure to follow Ethan on Twitter at EthanGSN and listen to NYG whenever it comes out.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. See you guys.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
All right, Nick, I'll let you do the same. Give your score prediction and final thoughts, and then I have like 12 bets I'm going to run through really fast. So.
I like it somewhere in that 20s. I wrote down 28-24 San Francisco. I think San Francisco is the better team. It's simply going to come down to a matter of who messes up. That's generally how these games go. Last week in the conference title games, it was the Ravens and it was Detroit who messed up, and that's what swung the games. They didn't get dramatically outplayed. They made bad decisions. As far as MVP, I'm with Ethan, unfortunately, which is never a good sign. Whenever he and I are aligned, bad things typically happen, but I like McCaffrey for MVP. I like Juwan Jennings over 11.5 receiving yards. I like both quarterbacks to throw an interception. I like Jake Moody over 1.5 field goals, and I am and Juszczyk anytime touchdown. That was the last one I couldn't think of.
Yes, of course. Last time these two teams played in the Super Bowl, Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 interceptions and Patrick Mahomes had 2 interceptions. You see it a lot in these games, especially early in the game when guys are nervous and trying to force something, or the other way around late in the game when if your team's down 2 scores and you really need to push the ball up the field, like we saw Lamar do in the AFC Championship game where he threw that really bad interception. Guys just do dumb stuff when they feel the pressure to go score. So I always like betting the interceptions in these big games. So like I said, I bet 49ers money line. I also bet the 49ers first half money line. I think the whole narrative going into this game is basically like, if the 49ers are going to have a late lead, like, can they stop Patrick Mahomes from coming back and winning in the fourth quarter? So they're minus 120 on the first half money line. I think that's a good price. So I like that. I bet Debo anytime touchdown plus 180 and Debo to go over his rushing plus receiving yards over 75.5. We already have talked a lot about Debo. I bet Purdy, Noah Gray, and Juszczyk anytime touchdowns. I talked about those already. The last couple weird props, I'm going to be on the Fred Warner one now. Kind of random ones. I have Elijah Mitchell under 3.5 rushing yards, which is going to be a sweat because his carries is over 1.5 carries. Like, he's expected to only maybe get the ball 1 or 2 times. And I think if they do, it will be kind of on like a throwaway down where it's like McCaffrey just needs his one tiny break of the entire game, or maybe like a goal line situation that he gets some weird touch. So I like that. And that is a sweat the whole game. And then I took Pacheco under 20.5 receiving yards. I think Pacheco will get the ball a lot running the ball. I don't really see him being, in general, he's not too much of a threat catching the ball coming out of the backfield, but also the 49ers with their linebackers are really, really good at defending that.
He's only gone over 25 times all year, including the playoffs.
Yeah. And against these linebackers that just fly around the field, if he catches a little screen pass, like, he's getting 2 or 3 yards max. Like, he's not breaking a big one, in my opinion. And I think Travis Kelce will be much more of that go-to safety blanket, where sometimes a running back could be for other teams. And yeah, that's what I got. And then adding the Fred Warner tackles. I feel very mature. This is going to be the first year in since I've started betting that I am not betting the coin toss. I'm not betting the Gatorade color. I'm not betting the halftime. It's just too much to keep track of. Instead, what I'm doing with my friends is we're doing like printing out like prop sheets that have those types of things, like heads or tails. It does have like first touchdown, and then it has like first song at the halftime show, national anthem, over under, Gatorade color, like those kinds of things that I've just like burned money on in the past. It's like, I'm not doing it.
It's a donation.
Again. And we're all just going to throw in like $20 and just have a pool, and whoever gets the most right on their prop sheet just wins the whole pool, which I would much rather do that and kind of be like competing against my friends that I'll be watching the game with than bet those kind of weird props. So that's an idea if other people want to do the same thing. But I think that's it. I mean, it should be an awesome game. It was an awesome game the last time these two teams were in the Super Bowl. I really don't see a blowout possibility. I guess I didn't give a score. I'm going to go 27-20 49ers as my final score. I think their defense steps up. I think Brock Purdy is good enough. I think he can take care of business, and I think they'll run the ball with Debo and with McCaffrey all over the place, and it'll be enough. It's kind of scary. All three of us are on the 49ers, but everybody else in the world I've listened to is on the Chiefs, so I think it balances out a little bit. But yeah, that's it. Should be an awesome game. Nick, thanks for joining me. As always, make sure to follow Nick at Nick Zararis on Twitter. And yeah, thanks for listening. And next time I put out an episode, it won't be about football, which is very depressing. But Nick will be back for his annual episode, catching us up on what is happening in the world of hockey, because I love to do that before the NHL playoffs. So Nick, you'll be back then for sure. And other than that, thanks to everybody for listening, and see you.